Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show today. We are going to have, as usual, a wonderful show for you today. Actually, today we're going to get into some business now. We are going to get into some important stuff. If you're just joining us, please remember to go ahead. If you are on YouTube, give us that thumbs up. Let's make sure that algorithm is working. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and give us that like. If you're on Twitch, go ahead and give us that like. If you're on Twitter, go ahead and share. How do you do that? You know, handle for Politics and Right is like at Egberto Willis, at Egberto Willis on Twitter. And of course, you can just do your regular shares on all the other platforms. Welcome aboard, Maywood. Welcome to the show. E2247, welcome aboard. Maywood says, hello everyone from Long Beach, California. E2247 says, COP26 yesterday, day 3 was Climate Finance Day, where world leaders and private sector executives announced new climate targets for climate finance. And Eric Hayes says, high Al can be dangerous. High Al or high AI? Which one do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Let me know which one do you mean. Greta Indigenous Environmental Network and Greenpeace crashed the offsets panels on carbon offsets, calling offsets out for greenwashing. We all know that. So anyhow, folks, what's the program going to be about today? Let's go ahead and get busy and putting that up on the screen. Program today says, a lying Republican on all, meaning on everything. An economist on deficit lie. Private sector owned supply chain failure. Let's not allow the fault. One of the reasons I'm graphic in the title is because I want the false narrative that we are all getting on TV to cease. I want you to not believe that false narrative. Again, those of you that are just showing up on YouTube, please go ahead and throw that thumbs up. Those of you that are on Facebook, give us that like. Twitch as well. Twitter, go ahead and follow at Egberto Willis. Look, we have to get the nomenclature straight. We have to make sure that folks are not buying into the false belief that somehow the Biden administration has anything to do with a supply chain problem. We're going to go over that a little bit later. So anyhow, the title, Economist Stephanie Kelton, she blows a hole in the deficit myth. You know, we always have conservatives when they are not in power talking about deficits, and they like to talk about things like, we balance our budgets at home, so why don't the government learn how to live within its purse strings as well? And you know, we'd like to live within our purse strings as a government, but to live within the purse string as a government also requires that you are willing to charge those people who benefit the most from your system, your economic system, to pay their fair share into the economic system. You would expect that, right? That is what we want. But that's not what they do. I mean, you'd hear the conservatives say, let's balance the budget and let's do it just like we have to balance our budgets at home. As if they are one and in the same. As if credit from the government means the same as credit for a regular person. The truth of the matter is they know better. And you know how we know they know better? Because when they are in power, they spend like money is going out of style, but they don't do it the way the Democrats and progressives spend money. Democrats and progressives spend money to say, let's uplift that person. Let's make sure that person has a college education. Let's make sure that person can go to school. Let's make sure that that person can eat. Let's make sure all these good things that government can do for people. Let's do it. But when Republicans are in power, their way of spending money is to say, let's give back all those taxes that would otherwise be paid by those who most use our economic system to go scotch-free. That's their way of blowing the budget. But then they continue to spend. They continue to give benefits to the corporate structure, right? That is amazing how they work. Folks, one of the problems that we have, if you notice, Trump used to say something that was, Trump is pretty dumb. We know that. But he was not only dumb, he wanted others to be just as dumb or dumber than he was. Why? There's a specific reason why he needed that. Because the dumb population would believe that if I can balance my budget at home, the government should be able to balance its budget as well. A dumb person would believe that a deficit is equivalent to you spending money on a credit card. They don't know anything about a sovereign currency. They don't understand the creation of money. They don't understand how you create, how one would create debt or no debt, how one would create money out of air, which is what we do. People have a tendency to believe money is backed by gold. I always have to ask people this. People always say, when we're in dire straits, we want to have some sort of hard currency. We want to have gold. And you have all those charlatanes out there on the internet telling you, oh, times are going to be hard. Inflation is coming. Go get gold. And then I always ask my question. I always ask a special question. If you go get gold, what are you going to do with gold? What are you going to buy with gold? You're going to go to the bread maker and say, here, take a piece of gold for give me that bread. Gold only has value if we decide that we want to give gold value. There's nothing special about gold more so than silver, more so than a piece of dirt, if that's what we want to do. But very few people understand. We buy into the concept of indoctrination that allows us to give value to things arbitrarily. And until we understand the reality of money, the reality of credit, and how things work, we will continue to be in the predicament that we are in, where just a few of the people control our economy because they make us believe that things can only be the way they are right now. Eric Hayes says, the government lies. Well, I'm not going to tell you that the government doesn't lie, because people in the government lie. They are just people, just like people in corporations lie. People in the private sector lie. Remember, the tobacco company used to tell you that tobacco doesn't cause cancer, even though they had research that proved it otherwise. But they said it didn't cause cancer. Then they decided to change their name to Altria so that no longer did their name associate with the killer that tobacco is, right? So they all lie, right? The oil companies came and said that they're not causing global warming, right? That's what they did. So let's not go on to the kick about government lies and somehow the private sector gets a pass. Eric Hayes says, look at the disconnect of what changes are being made on the fly with this bill and trillions pushing stuff into it like payments to others. I bet you couldn't tell me not one thing that bill does that is somehow not what I bet you couldn't tell me one real thing that you haven't listened from right-wing radio at all. I bet you couldn't. The Duck That Quack says, I love the bank's rule of nines. I want to open a bank when I grow up. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? May Wood, Eric Hayes, you mean pushing the stuff out you don't know, truly critical stuff, but pushing it out nonetheless? Exactly, May Wood, you hit the nail on the head. Eric Hayes says, you're basically saying we have endless monies. Debt is not sustainable model. You are not pushing the burden on future generations, which is wrong. Eric, I thought you were an accountant. If I remember correctly, I thought you were an accountant. But then again, that would mean you were indoctrinated into the business school put out by Milton Friedman and the others who believe in these theories that they've created to make up. No, first of all, are you basically saying we have endless monies? Actually, we do. We have endless money. And as long as you have services and hardware and products for which that endless money to buy, it is endless. Right now, Stephanie Kelton estimated there's about $800 billion slack in our economy. What that means is if we expanded our money supply by $800 billion in a given year, that still would not, remember we have I don't remember how many decades and trillion budget, economy, size of the economy. But if you expanded our money supply, and how do you expand the money supply? We can go ahead and give more services to people, more childcare, more all these other things. It turns out that we had an $800 slack in our economy. It's not fairy dust. It's just the rules of the economy, Hayes. Deborah John, welcome aboard. The Duck That Quack says catalytic converters are turning some big bucks. Yeah, catalytic converter. Now, if you have one, you can take it to the trash man and you can get quite a few $100s for a stolen catalytic converter. It's a shame, isn't it? A lot of people start their car up and hear rat-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And why did they hear that? Because somebody took their catalytic converter. Let's see what else we hear. Okay. Again, I wish one of the reasons we have politics and right is we need to have people understand how the system really works. And if they don't, that is why folks can pull the cloth over their heads. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with our first video. It has to do exactly with Stephanie Kelton. Very important video. Check it out. We'll take it on the other side. Republicans are happy. Why are they happy? Youngkin won in Virginia, and they think they have a winning message. Family values. We are going to be the party of families and education. And Democrats are running scared. Oh, we've got to do something now to counteract that. Well, you don't have to do anything that you're not currently planning on doing with Build Back Better, because there are the answers. Stephanie Kelton appeared with Farid Zakaria a couple of days ago, and I think what she had to say about the federal budget deficit and deficit spending is very, very important. Many people have a tendency to believe that the federal budget deficit somehow shares the budgeting that we do personally in common. Of course, it's not the case. She's one of the proponents of modern monetary theory, something that we've discussed before and have had several programs on. Check this out, and then we will take it on the other side.
Stephanie Kelton is a professor of economics and public policy and the author of The Deficit Myth. Welcome, Stephanie. One of the things that you have talked about in your book is that when we think about this question of are we spending too much, will this kind of deficit spending cause problems like inflation? You say it's as if the last 30 years of history didn't happen. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, Fareed, for so many years, we have been taught to think about government deficits as something that's inherently irresponsible. Maybe in a time of crisis, like after the financial crisis and the Great Recession or during the COVID pandemic, we make allowances and we say, well, okay, we have to run some deficits because it's a moment of crisis. But in more normal times, we're told that deficits are something that we ought to strive to avoid, that governments ought to balance their budgets, that they should effectively balance like a budget like a household, that deficits are dangerous because they do things like driving up interest rates, making our long-term debt unsustainable, producing a slower growing economy, putting us at risk of national bankruptcy, insolvency, turning into Greece, the kind of thing that we saw in 2010 with many countries in Europe struggling with debt. So we've been taught to think of deficits as something that's inherently dangerous and risky. And I think the last 30 years, as you just said, really should cause us to rethink a lot of that.
And explain what you mean by that. We've been spending, we've run up large deficits. Countries like Japan have run up huge deficits and no inflation.
Yeah, Japan's been running large fiscal deficits for the last 3 decades. And you're right, with little inflation to show for it. The U.S. has been running fiscal deficits basically my entire life, with the exception of really 4 years during the Clinton presidency. And, we have just witnessed in the last 18 months or so, Congress commit about $5 trillion to fighting the pandemic, supporting the economy. And what did we end up with? We ended up with the shortest recession in U.S. history. So we have demonstrated the power of fiscal policy, what it is possible to do, lifting nearly half of all the kids in this country out of poverty, supporting families, supporting small and large businesses, protecting this economy through the pandemic. And it works without producing all of the negative consequences that we've been taught to associate with deficits.
What about the argument that now you are seeing inflation? Larry Summers has argued that right now, because of the COVID relief spending that was in his view too much, you are seeing inflation. Summers, I should explain, does support a lot of the social spending in the infrastructure bills, but he feels like all of it together is producing inflation, and the numbers do seem to be ticking up, right?
Well, look, one of the first things that we teach students in their very first economics course is not to confuse correlation with causation. So yes, we have had 2 things happen. We have had a huge increase in fiscal support. So large government deficits that have supported the economy and pulled us out of a recession very, very quickly. And yes, we have higher than normal inflationary pressures, not just here in the US, Fareed, but of course around the world. And so you could look at these two things and say they're happening alongside one another. Therefore, it must be evidence that the government has pushed too far with fiscal policy, that in fact the spending is creating the extra inflationary pressures we see today. I don't think that's right at all. And if you look at what, let's say, the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, they've got a research staff, and some of their researchers just within the last 2 weeks published a study asking this exact question. How much of the current inflation we're experiencing can we trace to the $1.9 trillion COVID relief package that was passed in March? In other words, is Larry right? Is Larry Summers right that that is what's been driving a lot of the inflation that we are currently experiencing? What they found is that the answer is unequivocally no, that this year, that spending will add something like 0.3 percentage points to the inflation index that the Federal Reserve cares most about, and that next year it will add about 0.2% to inflation. In other words, it is practically negligible. And what we're dealing with are supply chain and reopening. The pressures related to those kinds of challenges are pushing inflation higher, but it doesn't appear that it is correct to say that the government pushed spending too far.
Do not conflate correlation with causation. Do not do that. And that is exactly what she's saying. The inflation today is caused by many different factors. When it comes to oil, let's remember one important fact. A very important fact is the following. There is never a shortage of oil. We have cartels that control the amount of oil placed on the market. It has nothing to do with supply and demand in this particular domain. Secondly, we have to remember that inflation has a lot to do with who has pricing power. The increase in medical health care costs has nothing to do with what the goods cost the originators of the services at all. It's simply what the market can bear. You get a broken leg, you're going to have to go to the hospital and get it fixed, and no matter what they charge you, you're going to have to pay. That is how it works. Now, there are some pressures that we have based on things like the supply chain. That also is a fault of the private sector. We'll discuss that at some other time as well. Remember, correlation. I do not conflate correlation with causation at all. It is also important to note, as long as you have supply, sufficient supply of any product, any service, you cannot have inflation unless you have the capitalists with pricing power that decides that we are going to make those prices go up. Do not be fooled into a crony capitalism that uses every excuse possible to suck you dry. That is important. That is very important, that last statement, because that is what they do, suck you dry. I want to jump to something that Bruce Pollard asked. Does the price of gas depend on the deficit? Yes and no. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If we have a certain deficit, if we have a deficit that is causing inflation, then given that the oil is a commodity, the relative price of oil will go up with the relative strength, or rather will go inversely proportional to the relative strength of the dollar. What does that mean? If the dollar weakens in the aggregate with relative to whomever you're buying the oil from, then of course the price of the oil goes up in the aggregate based on the relative values. But the deficit in its own right cannot do that. Let me give another corollary to that. Let's say that we got the value of the dollar fell, but the glut of oil increased, right? The delta that causes a price increase based on a weak dollar is mitigated by the glut of oil, because you don't have you only start to get pricing power if you have people bidding on a resource. Now, when it comes to healthcare, and that is the reason why healthcare does not belong in the private sector. When it comes to healthcare, if you break a leg, you can't say, well, let's see, hospital A is charging this, hospital B is charging that. I'm having a heart attack or a broken leg. I need it fixed now. I've got to pay whatever you charge, absent the proper type of regulations. It doesn't belong in the private sector at all, at all, at all. Let's see. Puffin says, Egberto, blessings to Egberto and Ashley and your family. Yes, she's doing just fine every day, getting a bit stronger, a bit more independent. Very, very well. Thank you so kindly for asking, Puffin. All right, let's continue. Let me see what else. What I want to get to your questions in before I go to the other question. Enjoy our song "Blazin" by Frozen on YouTube when you puff. Check out Puffin's song. I haven't checked it out, but I imagine it's good, Puffin. All right, let's see. E2247, either they stop financing fossil expansion or the net zero commitments are greenwash. Exactly, I agree with that statement. The duck that quacks says the price of oil depends on the Middle sheiks. True, that's what we were saying, right? In other words, they have a cartel. They decide how much they want to pump out of the ground or not. They love gas guzzling trucks, but more USA. But buy more USA. But you know what's so interesting about it? They are on a carbon neutral expansion in Saudi Arabia. Think about that. That's what they're doing. While they're trying to get us to suck all their oil, they're looking for the future. A lot of these guys are, you know. If Terry McAuliffe had legalized Bud like Phil Murphy did in New Jersey, maybe he'd have a lot reelected. Yeah, he lost by 70-something thousand last time I saw. That would be enough teenagers, enough 21-year-olds if he had legalized the Bud. I agree with you. You know, that could have been the delta, because even rural dopies would have voted for him. Even the dopies in the rural areas would have voted for him. Okay. The price of oil depends on the Medici. Oh, I read that one already. We also have Tom C. says, per PolitiFact, Reagan took deficit from 70 billion to 175 billion. Bush took it to 300 billion. Clinton got it to zero. Bush 43 took it from 0 to 1.2 trillion. Obama cut it to 600 billion. Trump raised it to 1 trillion. It's amazing. But you know, it's hard. People, this is how poor Democrats are at marketing, or even at telling the truth of what occurred. The people that bust the deficit, the people that have the worst economies, are when we have Republicans in power. Yet somehow too many Americans believe that they are the fiscal responsible one. Do Democrats like to spend more money on people? Yes. Do Democrats like more taxes on the wealthy? Yes. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. If you are the one who abused and used the economy more so than anybody else, you should pay for it. It's that simple. It's called responsibility, morality, right? The duck that quacks says almost 100,000 miles on electricity. Make your own and drive on your own home brewed power. I agree. That's what we'll do. Daniel Ledo, all right. Peggy Lopez says she's just listening today. So welcome aboard, Peggy. Welcome aboard to the program. All right, let's go ahead and go to the other video. Let's get things to sort of normalize here, and then we'll come back on the other side. This is Pete Buttigieg telling the truth about you know what. Check this out. Pete Buttigieg. I mean, everybody's been talking about the supply chain issue, the supply chain problem that's happening, and what is Biden going to do about the supply chain problem? I'm going to hit this one time again, and that is a private sector problem. I want you to listen to Buttigieg. He's not going to quite say it that way. No administration is going to say, we don't have control. It's a private sector who runs this stuff. We're going to, but they're coming to beg us. The private sector is coming to beg the government, give us a hand, because we just can't do it by ourselves. Something that when we're making money, they like to tell you, leave us alone. But I want you to listen to Buttigieg, and then we'll take it on the other side, because this is important for Americans to understand. This supply problem is a profit-based problem. They screwed the Americans to keep their profits high and give them more, make them at best uncomfortable. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
I want to move on because you mentioned infrastructure. I want to talk about the supply chain crisis. 2 weeks after the Biden administration announced that key ports would move to 24/7 operations, supply chain backlogs are still really not getting much better. There are persistent truck driver shortages, warehouses are overflowing, an estimated $24 billion worth of goods are stuck waiting to go through U.S. ports. So how are these going to be fixed? And do you expect these persistent delays to continue through the holidays?
Well, we are going to continue to see challenges. The steps that we're taking are making a difference, but think about all of the things that have to happen to get a product to a shelf on time. Fundamentally, it's up to the producers, the shippers, and the retailers, and we're doing everything we can to help them move those goods across infrastructure that's often outdated. Look, we've got demand that's off the charts. The Retail Federation is predicting an all-time record high in terms of sales. We've got supply, which is in some cases actually up, but not up enough to keep up with that demand. And then the biggest thing of all, of course, you have the pandemic. The pandemic is poking holes in supply no matter how good any company or any administration is. We're going to keep working on things like the port issues, smoothing out anything else that is within our control. But the only way we can really put these disruptions behind us is to put the pandemic in the rearview mirror, which is why the president has been leading decisively to do just that.
If you notice, he said, we'll do what we can, and remember that it's the producers, the manufacturers, and the suppliers whose job it is to get this done. I want folks to be clear here. The reason we are having a supply problem has everything to do with the private sector. They are the reasons why they have just-in-time inventory. They are the reasons why they didn't invest in infrastructure. They are the reason that they paid off the government to have lousy ports, lousy infrastructure. It is they who created the atmosphere of failure that we currently see. It is the private sector who is responsible for these failures. Anyone who continues to say, let's just leave it up to the private sector, you're saying, let's just leave the pain of the people up to those who best profit from them. Don't you ever forget that. We want to change that. We have to have better government controlled by we the people who create the regulations that are necessary to prevent those folks who would profit on our backs from being able to screw us year after year, decade after decade. Absolutely. So anyhow, we are at the halfway mark. Hey, guys, let me tell you, I had to change my, I'm glad. The way we set this stuff up, right, is we have the wireless mics, etc., but we also have the backup system in case something like what just happened, ready to fly on the fly. Anyhow, it is that time of the day. Please, if you are on YouTube right now, please consider becoming a part of our PDR Posse by simply clicking that join button. If you click that join button, you can become a part of our PDR Posse, something that we need right now. If you're not on YouTube or if you don't see that join button, simply go to this field here, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Alternatively, you can also support us on Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. And of course, we like good old standby PayPal. You can either be a subscriber on PayPal or a one-time supporter on PayPal. You decide how you want to support us. Look, it's getting cool. Like I said yesterday and the day before and the day before. Yes, great news about Ashley. Ashley is getting better. Ashley is getting better. We are working on her, and that's why we will remain in DC till she is 100%. Anyway, folks, go to our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, politicsdoneright.com/store to get that hoodie. It's getting cold. Get that hoodie, that jacket, that hat, that cap, that t-shirt, and please consider getting our books. We talk a lot about the economy. So we talk about it from a point of view that is not the indoctrinative point of view. Because right now in America, you learn everything in such a manner that you get indoctrinated and you cannot see things objectively. So consider getting our books. You'll learn about the economy objectively, learn about farmers, all that good stuff objectively. And then in the last book that I wrote, How to Make America Utopia, sort of a start as far as how can we create a system that is great for us all. politicsdoneright.com/books. Please consider going there. The catch all for all the different methods of supporting us is politicsdoneright.com/support. Yes, Linda Jo Kessinger, she is doing better. I mean, it's like it is a miracle as far as I'm concerned, based on what I told you, what things were like in the beginning to how they are now. I am a happy camper, as you guys all know. A very, very, very happy camper. Grab My, I like that. I like that that thing that you just did, Puffin. But I won't repeat it. I can't repeat it. Anyhow, we have some other videos that I want to show you. Okay, and this one now has to do with. This one kind of really got me upset. This one got me upset because it just shows how effective the Republican lying machine is, and how ineffective too often Democrats are to set the record straight. And that's what we try to do here, right? Set the record straight. But I'm going to play the first one and then the second one because I think you'll get my drift. Let's check it out and then we'll take it on the other side. Republicans are happy. Why are they happy? Youngkin won in Virginia, and they think they have a winning message. Family values. We are going to be the party of families and education. And Democrats are running scared. Oh, we've got to do something now to counteract that. Well, you don't have to do anything that you're not currently planning on doing with Build Back Better, because there are the answers to many of the problems that we have. And you know what? Kevin Brady gave an interview today to Stephanie Rule that should make us all happy, and we should take this interview and plaster bits and pieces of it to show exactly what the party is all about. Family value, my you know what. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
Congressman Kevin Brady. He's a Republican from the state of Texas and the ranking member of the Tax Writing Ways and Means Committee. When it comes to monetary policy, that is on the Fed. I know you think the Biden administration is dropping the ball. They need to pay attention to inflation. What does the Fed need to do?
Yeah, so I think one, stop making things worse. They've really been in denial. I get frustrated with the Fed because I think they've been in a big denial about the labor shortage for way too long, certainly about inflation. I think they're trying to sell this transitory, but it doesn't feel that way.
So what do you want them to do?
Now, so one, stop making it worse would be the first thing. I think this tapering's a little bit of a help, but in truth, they're still pushing Congress to go big on more stimulus spending, and they're not addressing the labor shortage in any way. I get frustrated because COVID isn't the problem with inflation or the labor shortage. That was already present in the economy in a bad way before the Delta variant showed up. But in this new spending package, for example, beyond over $1 trillion of crippling tax hikes, including on small businesses, there are a couple programs that actually discourage Americans from reconnecting to work. The new child tax credit will no longer be tied to earnings, so it becomes a welfare program.
Why does that discourage people? Hold on a second. Why does that discourage people from going to work? Here's an example.
Yes.
I can afford I can afford childcare. It's very, very expensive in the United States. Because I can afford childcare, I can go to work. With the expanded child tax credit, people will be able to pay for childcare in this country so they, in fact, can go out and work. If I'm only making minimum wage.
Yeah. So actually, Stephanie, they're not. Two new studies, one that shows the child tax credit for COVID was spent mainly on retirement and savings. Not a bad thing, but not its intended purpose. Secondly, it didn't reach 9 out of the 10 poorest Americans who don't work, who don't have tax records, who don't know how to interact with the Treasury and the IRS, and so it even missed its mark there. Here's the challenge: is if you
hold on a second, it didn't. Hold on a second, sir. It didn't exclude those people. If those are people who don't currently file taxes, if they don't communicate with the IRS, it hasn't reached them yet. It's going to take some time to get the process to work. It's not that they were excluded.
But right now, 9 out of 10 are not getting help. Secondly, do we really, at a time we desperately need workers, are we smart to send about 1.5 million people exiting the workforce with the child tax credit no longer tied to earnings or work? This is not the time to be erecting barriers to reconnecting the jobless to a job, just the opposite.
Well, one could argue it's always a good time to lift children out of poverty. I want to talk infrastructure because
Stephanie,
Democrats.
That's the point. It didn't lift it out of poverty. What did, though? The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act by Republicans lifted millions out of poverty within a year of being put in place and drove wages up to pay for childcare, for example, among Hispanics, blacks, women, disabled in a way we didn't see at all the last time Joe Biden was in the White House.
First of all, the Congressman, Representative Brady from Texas, is a liar. The fact of the matter is the rescue plan brought 50% of kids out of poverty. That is a statistical, mathematical fact. So that is a lie that he stated there. And the tax cut that they give, the tax cut scam that we had from Donald Trump, did not do and bring people out of poverty. A rising economic system brought more people out of poverty, not that they did something, because most of the money used by the tax cut scam from Donald Trump went into buyback stocks, which means make rich people wealthier, and it gave very little to everybody else. And as prices had increased before the COVID started, people were simply paying that extra money that they got from that little tiny tax cut that a few people got into higher healthcare prices. Do not believe the Republican lie. But Democrats cannot let what Brady just said go unanswered. In fact, they should tag him with that. First of all, he points out that there is a labor shortage. So let's screw Americans. There's a labor shortage. Those private sector people need to have people to work. So therefore, if we, the government, make sure that kids are not poor, if we, the government, give people a stipend just so that they can survive and go to get a job, that somehow many of them are simply going to stay home, and therefore we cannot force them to work. Understand, the family values person says we don't give a damn about families. We only care about business. We don't want to give them social services because business need them. And if we give them social services, they will have a choice. And if business really want them, business has to pay more than social services are willing to provide to keep them sustainable. Understand it. Now, I am not an expert in narrative, but Democrats, if they really want, can hire experts in narrative and turn those two statements that Kevin Brady makes. We cannot give people money because it'll hurt the businesses. We want to enslave the American people to business. So no help from we the people, no help from we the people so that you can work for government for cheap. The second thing that he implies is that, we need to make sure that you can hire these people on the cheap, because the only way you will get them to work for you is if you pay them more than what they can get in services that they will have the choices to earn more based on what the market, everybody like to talk about what the market will bear. So folks, it is so important going forward. Do not allow this to go unanswered. Democrats, if they do not answer this is the losing mechanism. But Kevin Brady gave them the pathway to not only victory, but to a landslide in 2022. Absolutely so. But before we get busy, I want to say welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, El Señor John Francisi. John Francisi, welcome to Politics Done Right. You are the newest member of our PDR posse. Folks, why don't you guys follow John Francisi? Click that join button on your YouTube channel. And if you don't see that join button on your YouTube channel, consider clicking politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, which I'm throwing into the feed. Or if you want to see all the ways in which you can support us, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, Patreon. Anyhow, so as you can see, that is what he did. That is what he did. He went ahead and said, oh, well, the Trump tax cut somehow helped. It is a bald-faced lie. Please remember that. But worse, to come out and say that the rescue plan helped nobody. It's a lie when everybody has the stats. The government has the stats. Brady has the stats. He has no problems lying to you. How then can you ever believe him? We have another piece to play for you. Brady again. I think this one is even more comical because, we've always talked about taxes going to the rich. That's what the Republicans do. But now he's turned it on us. And if we can't see it, we deserve everything that we will get. But anyhow, check this out. We'll take it on the other side. I don't think I've heard a bigger lie than the way, but with the art form with which Representative Kevin Brady, Republican of Texas, did it. I want you to listen to this, and then what we'll do is we'll take it on the other side, because it is amazing how these guys know how to use good democratic policy and turn it into a weapon. Yet they have bad policies that we should easily weaponize that we generally don't. Check this out, then we'll take it on the other side.
Let's talk about those Republican tax cuts, because they got rid of the state and local tax deductions and
They limited
them. Democrats are looking to bring those back. You argue that it is a giveaway to the wealthy. Why shouldn't we help high tax states like New Jersey, where people are saying, I have to leave the state, I can't afford to live here? What they're doing is they're moving to cheaper states like yours, Texas.
One, that's their choice. One, these are great states, by the way. People love living there, but they just are brutally taxed,
All
both as
states are
families
great.
and businesses. That's why they're leaving. Secondly, why should the building janitor who doesn't itemize subsidize the occupants of the penthouse who gets under repealing the SALT cap, gets the majority of the tax windfall goes to millionaire and billionaire households? Why is that fair? And why should low tax states subsidize high tax states? It is a giveaway to the wealthy. And today, as we talk, it is the number one reason they're not moving forward on this big tax and spend bill. They can't figure out how to give this tax windfall to the wealthy.
My God, this guy has turned around the argument that Democrats successfully and reliably use against Republican policy to hit us up on a tax cut. Here it is. Democrats are trying to give a tax cut to a tax cut, and somehow they have found a way to turn a tax cut into a giveaway to the wealthy. Now remember, that is first of all very, very rich. We have to remember that the $1.7 trillion tax cut that Kevin Brady put together went mostly to corporations and the rich, and there was a pittance that actually went to the average American citizen. They took it and they became wealthy. They had stock buybacks and the works. And he has the nerve to say that somehow it is a giveaway to the wealthy because the Democrats want to give a tax cut to states that have a very high sales taxes, property taxes, etc. If you pay these taxes, you should get a break. Now, here's what's rich. Stephanie says, all these people are moving to low tax states like Texas and Kentucky and all these other states, right? Here is a kicker. These states that people are moving to, they make their wealth in blue states, in blue rich states. And then they migrate to Texas with the riches that they've acquired over there. You know why? Because states like Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, even Texas to some extent, they are all beggar states. They are all welfare states. In other words, they take out more from the federal government than they put in. In other words, what are we saying? We're saying blue states are subsidizing those red states that they claim people are running to because they have lower taxes. They have lower taxes, and who's subsidizing them? Blue states are subsidizing the red states that you just heard Kevin Brady talk about. Why should we subsidize those other states? No, it's the other way around. Look up the numbers. The federal government takes the money from New York. The federal government takes the money from Connecticut. The federal government takes the money from all these rich blue states and give it to the red states that have very low taxes, that have very low education, that does very little for its people, and they're nothing more than welfare states. Come on, it is rich, and it irks me that Stephanie Rule, who should know about that, didn't bring that up. It irks me that Democrats in general, the first time somebody talks about Kentucky, the first time somebody talks about Mississippi, the first time somebody talks about Alabama, Arkansas, Oklahoma, they are beggar states. They are beggar states not because the people in the states are bad. They are beggar states because they have lousy Republican governments that know exactly how not to govern and pilfer their own. And pilfer their own, but I tell you, better than that, folks, I have something for you. I want you to listen to this because this covers the same particular issue. Check this out, then we'll take it on the other side.
The other thing, again, that confuses me is why the targeting of salt, which is a which is a huge issue in the north, basically all of the blue states. I mean, it reads very political in the sense that basically the salt deduction elimination or reduction, the reduction of the fact that you cannot deduct your state and local taxes from federal taxes is at the direct expense of those higher salt state and local income economies, which are the densest population, the most economically vibrant, and comes at the direct expense of the infrastructure in New York, California, where you need that the most.
And I'll tell you, from someone who comes from Indiana in the Midwest, where we believe in low taxes, responsible spending, we also don't think that our tax dollars should be used to offset the bloated, out-of-control spending of these traditional...
Well, I'll tell you, I'm
one thing real quick, though.
And so that money is being taken out of our pockets.
That you say that because actually the blue states actually pay 2 times as much to the red states than the red states receive. So what you said was not actually correct. What you're saying now is that in addition to taking money from the blue states to pay for Indiana's infrastructure, you're also going to reduce the tax deduction for blue state tax holders to pay for their own infrastructure while they still subsidize red state.
While they still subsidize red states. I mean, I think that was such wonderful by Radigan. Radigan really got him. Here we got this pompous Republican saying, we don't want to be subsidizing you high tax states. When it turns out the reason they can be low tax states is that they're welfare states taking money from us all. You see why it is so important. Why it is so important for us to know things and not just listen to it. When we have Brother Eric Hayes listening to the right-wing media, he won't hear that reality. He won't understand that Kentucky, Alabama, Oklahoma, Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, all these red states that get 2 senators for having a few people, they're all beggar states. We all support them. Our tax dollars go to them. And at the same time, they want to be wrong and strong. Oh, we have low taxes. Come move to North Dakota. Come move to Oklahoma. We'll take good care of you. We won't charge you a lot of taxes. Yeah, right. Because we're paying you. Because we are the ones. You are the welfare queens of the states. And if Democrats would start doing that, telling the truth about this, I mean, I know what they do. They weigh the problem. Oh, if we go ahead and say that the North Dakota or Oklahoma or Alabama or states that are beggars, what about some of the people in Oklahoma are not going to like it? Yeah, but a lot of them are going to see the truth. And a lot of them are going to say, why are we a beggar state? Shouldn't we be better than that? Shouldn't we want to have an educated population? Shouldn't we want these things? But you see, again, it's the stuff that I talk to you about all the time. Do you prefer to have chains on your hands or chains in your head? The plutocracy has figured out which is more efficient. Chains in your head. And that is what our PDR posse is all about. Unchaining the heads of many. So PDR posse, thank you guys for doing that. We love that that's your job. We love that that's our job. To unchain minds that are unwillingly chained. Unchain minds that are unwillingly chained. And that is what we're going to do. Rose, yes. I think I have the books scrolling on the screen now. The different books that we have scrolling on the screen. So folks, consider doing that. Please go to politicsandright.com/books. Politicsandright.com/books. Get one of our books or get many of our books. We have that special on our books as well. If you take a look at the newsletter that goes out with the show every day, you'll see those good old specials on the books. Anyway, anything else anybody wants? Roberto Luis, mi hermano de Panamá, ¿cómo estás? Welcome to Politics Done Right as usual. ¿Quién más está aquí that I haven't saludado? Let's see. Que no he saludado. Let's see who is here that I haven't said hi to. Linda Jo Kensinger, I think I called you out, but I'm not sure. Maywood, I think I called you out. Rose Williams, of course, I called you out. Eric Hayes, I called you out, Puffin, and everybody else. Look, guys, thank you guys for being here. Somebody else just chimed in. Let's see, Linda Jo Eric, you said the current admin. Guess I misunderstood what you said. Bruce Pollard said, not just change minds, get them out to vote. Bruce Pollard, you're absolutely right. Look, we got to get out of here. I want to thank you guys for being here. I know you could be anywhere else, but you decided to spend the time with Politics Done Right. I could not be more indebted to you. As you can see, I have the screen. El Señor John, thank you so kindly for becoming our newest member. John Francisi, welcome to Politics Done Right. We aim to earn your trust. We aim to earn your support. We aim to earn all of that to ensure that you know we make the change to this country that we must. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. What? I got to read. Sorry, let me put it on hold 1 second. I have to read the next attack on my character from El Señor Ledo. Considering Egberto's total disconnect from reality and his jaundiced Marxism ideology, should he be considered clinically insane? When does he cross the line? Let's have a vote. How many of you think I'm clinically insane? My right-wing brother, Daniel Ledo, thinks I'm critically insane. Am I? Maybe. Who knows? If I am clinically insane, if using math make... Nanette Bird-Smith, welcome aboard. If using... Rose, I'll give your love to Ashley. If being clinically insane means doing math correctly and putting this out, I accept. Tom C., what is Ashley's blog link again? Oh, let me put her blog link up. Oh, you guys are holding me this for a little bit more, but I'm going to find her link and stick it in the channel right now. Bear with me a second as I pull it up. I've got, if somebody's going to ask for our beautiful Mariposa, her link to the chain, I've got to give you guys the link right now to her story. And it's coming up right now, guys. It's coming up right now. I had to go to another screen. Para ver dónde está. There is the link to her story. Anyhow, look, guys. So you can vote up whether I'm clinically insane or not. Drop a line in the comments and let me know if I'm clinically insane as far as you guys are concerned. But I don't think any of us are clinically insane. But that's okay. That's what it's all about. Nanette Bird Smith says, Team Ashley, love you. Okay, great. All right, guys. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please.